Bonjour tout le monde, bon matin. Très content de vous avoir avec nous de nouveau. Hier matin, on était avec Guy Leblanc d'Investissement Québec et aujourd'hui, on a le plaisir d'accueillir le président et chef de la direction de SNC-Lavalin, Ian Edwards. Ian, I'm very, very pleased to have you with us today. SNC, as we all know, is a company that is kind of an emblème du Québec. It's a fleuron du Québec. We saw that company grow. We were very proud of it. Now, of course, there was some bumps on the road over the past years. But I would say, and most people that I talk to completely agree, very good decisions were made. I think some cleanups was done. And I think now time has come to look ahead of us. Just so that I remind everyone that's listening to us, the sheer size of SNC-Lavalin. If my numbers are correct, there's 52,000 employees of SNC worldwide, and that just speaks to the capacity of SNC, but also the number of projects in the world that are happening, that are being built because of SNC. So as we are in this pandemic, as we look into infrastructure project, and we'll surely discuss that, clearly SNC has the capacity to play a very important role in what's coming ahead. Let me say that just so that people know you, because you've been in place now since 2019, but you've been, if I understand, with SNC since 2014 as Executive Vice President. You are originally from England. I suspect that explains the accent that we can detect here and there. And I can say that SNC is not your first experience, of course, in the area. You've been there in the infrastructure and resource projects for, I think, 30 years. So clearly you had the time to learn how to and what to avoid. So let me say that you became CEO almost a year ago. It was in October 2010. I reminded you that the first time I met you as a CEO, we were going on that new bridge, the Champlain Bridge. It was a pre-launch visit. So it made all of us, and I was there, extremely proud of that bridge. But since you got in place, I guess the world has changed. So I'll just let you say, coming in that job, you had some objectives. What were they? And has anything changed over that years about your objective as CEO of SNC-Lavalin?
So thank you, and bonjour Michel, bonjour à tous. Morning everybody, and merci de m'avoir invité ici aujourd'hui. Thank you for having me here today. I think it's a great time to have a conversation around infrastructure. So really, really pleased to be able to spend some time and share my thoughts. And you're right. I've been in this industry all my life. I've lived in Montreal now for 6 years. I've been with the company 6 years, and I had the privilege of leading the company just over a year ago. And I guess going into the role and knowing the company, and as you say, being part and knowing some of the history of the company, both from its long-term history and its short-term history, I had three key objectives, really. One was to get the pride back into SNC-Lavalin. And the second was to ensure our performance as a company was excellent. And the third is really positioning the company for the future. So let me take those three things and just talk through them. I mean, it's been a difficult decade for SNC-Lavalin, and a decade built on a 100-year history. And my primary objective is to continue to lead this company, and most of the leadership of the company is new, and to lead the company and put the past behind us. We have world-class integrity in the company. We have magnificent employees in this company that are very, very talented. And as you say, we really are a global champion. So my focus, certainly in the last year, is been getting the pride back into the employees, and getting us to recognize that what we do here in society and what we contribute to is important. And I think we've come a long way, and I think we're good about ourselves. We have a culture where we care. We care about each other. We have a culture, we care for our customers. We care for the communities that we work in. And we have more work to do. And my hope is that, we're seen once again as Canada's global champion of engineering, based here in Montreal and with Quebec origins. So that's one thing. The second is performance. Our performance hasn't been consistent. And I think there are things that we do that are excellent, and things that we do where our customers come back time and time again because of the work that's done. But it isn't consistent. And what we've been doing this last year is focusing really on our strengths and ensuring that what we do is excellent and consistent every time for every customer on every project. And again, it's a journey. I think we've come a long way in the year. We have more to do, and we're absolutely focused on that. Lastly, and obviously importantly, the future. We have a tremendous opportunity here as SNC-Lavalin to position ourselves for what I see as some disruption that will come into the engineering and construction market. I mean, a lot of industries have been disrupted through technology. A lot of professional services have been disrupted through technology, and our industry will be disrupted through technology. The adoption of digital tools, the adoption of innovative technologies, and we want to be seen as leading that into the industry and actually being part of the disruption and not being disrupted by it. So 3 Ps there on my agenda, the pride, the performance, and the positioning for future.
And, we'll talk about what's coming in the future, but let's look at the current situation right now. Of course, you get in the job, you have those objectives, and then the pandemic hits. How does SNC cope with that in terms of the workplace, the project? Are they delayed? You're an international company. Usually people travel in SNC-Lavalin. How does the company cope, and how has it coped for the last months with the situation?
Yeah. So very well is the headline there. I mean, I think that we have to consider that we have 2 types of people in our company. We have people that are deemed essential, so they operate assets such as hospitals or railways, and they physically construct things, such as the REM project here in Montreal. But actually, almost 3/4 of our people are professional services people that work from a desk, and that actually, have been able to work remotely. So, I mean, I and my leadership team have really prioritized the safety of our employees, as many companies have. But I must thank all of our employees, both the teams that are actually continuing to be essential workers, and the teams that have worked so hard remotely. And I think we've all experienced that technology, such as this discussion today, has enabled us to continue to operate companies such as SNC-Lavalin, and all of our kind of people that work from a desk have been able to work remotely. And it's been volatile, I mean, it's been a changing environment. I think our business in southern China, Hong Kong, and they've been in the office, they've been out of the office, they've gone back to the office, they've gone back home, and now they're back in the office. It's been quite a dynamic situation, but the most important thing is we prioritize the safety of our employees, and we're really, I'm really grateful to our employees for the way that they've battled through this. So I think that we've weathered the storm pretty well, actually.
When you look at the portfolio of all the projects that were either already on the table or that were supposed to come and start during the month since March. Just globally, are you coping with delays, perhaps due to the clients not deciding as quickly as they expected? Just so that we get a sense of let's say the backlog or what was already in there. Is there delays there, or did the delay disappear? I was speaking with Pierre Pomerleau a few weeks ago, and he was saying that for most of his project, they were able to catch up. What's the situation with the projects, the major projects that are important for SNC?
Yeah, I think. I mean, the industry has a long cycle. So, if you think about the projects that are going through planning phases and then going into the actual delivery execution phase, it's very difficult to switch those on and off. And as a consequence of that, the commitments that were made pre-COVID to build projects and to take projects through the planning phase, in the main, have remained. So we haven't seen any kind of short-term impact, so-called short-term impact, in the volume of work. I think what is really important is what happens next. What are we going to see post-COVID, and that's something that I think we should talk about. I mean, clearly. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say. So let's start this discussion about what's coming in the short term. I suspect that Canada is not different than any other major country in the world, which is let's build some infrastructure. Let's take the challenge ahead of us and turn it into an opportunity where we will invest in infrastructure that will either increase productivity, improve quality of life. So if you're SNC-Lavalin, you have a capacity, but every customer at the same time will come up with their project. How do you approach that situation?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. We see a very significant commitment to infrastructure. I mean, we see that from governments globally. We've seen the announcement very recently, here in Canada, and that's really, really good to see. I mean, and I think the investment in infrastructure is the right way to stimulate both the economy in the short term and I think develop long-term socioeconomic benefit through the provision of infrastructure, whether that's transport or social infrastructure or even energy and power infrastructure. So we see that as a great opportunity. Actually, if you think about those commitments and how those commitments are delivered against, actually the speed of delivery of those commitments has historically been a difficult challenge to overcome. And I guess the comparison you could make here is in 2008, where we hit the financial crisis, big commitment from governments to invest in infrastructure, but the reality is, the planning phase is actually getting those projects so-called shovel ready. Takes time, and in 2008, you could almost say, not just Canada, I think globally, that we were past the crisis before some of those projects were so-called shovel ready. So I think speed to enable those projects to be built, and speed in the way that they're built, I think is important. Not that should override any governance or planning or anything like that, but I think that there is improvements we can make, and I think there is potentially opportunities that both the private sector and the public sector could expand on and do better. And for ourselves, we've been running an initiative that we call ASRI, and our ASRI initiative is accelerating shovel-ready infrastructure. And the premise of this is to really form, close partnerships with governments to actually put together the capability of a company like SNC-Lavalin and the capability of government and the governance of government to actually make sure that we can cut through some red tape and constructively get these projects shovel ready in the most expeditious way possible. And I have to say that we have had some very good dialogue on this, and I think there's an absolute will here in Canada, as well as other jurisdictions where we work, that there are improvements both that we can make together to deliver. And there's one other component here which I also think is important in the way that we deliver infrastructure, in that there are now modern, I would call, construction techniques which we can apply to the building of transport infrastructure buildings. And if you think about the Champlain Bridge here in Montreal, almost all the Champlain Bridge was built in factories. Most of those factories in Quebec, and we just assembled the bridge over the river. So doing that in a factory environment and putting construction more into factory environments, can improve the quality, it can improve the speed, it can improve the cost, and it can improve the impact that building things has in communities. So I would say that there's a couple of things there that we need to kind of work our way through with governments to improve the way things are done. And it's very, very possible. Here in Quebec, there's an absolute will to build more social infrastructure, particularly around the health sector and care homes. There's absolutely, a way that we can build these in factories, put them in flat packs, send them on lorries, and just assemble them, and hopefully get those care homes and things like that done quicker to a good quality. So a couple of things there to think about, as we kind of go through this stimulus phase.
Maybe, Ian, just to help people who might not be familiar that are listening to us, on the first part of the improvement you'd like to see, there's this kind of more collaborative approach between the let's say the company and the government or whomever need to have the project done. How do you do that and in a competitive framework where you will have many companies? How do you engage? At what point do you engage in making sure that the competitiveness of the system remains?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, and it certainly isn't one that we seek to position ourselves, above competition. I mean, we must have competition for us all to improve ourselves. I mean, that's the great part of competition. So what we would advocate is that to ensure the best outcomes are delivered, the best outcome is that companies form partnerships early in the planning phase and take the development of an infrastructure or a building, through that planning phase, through the design phase, through the construction phase, and into the operation phase. And we would advocate that because there are advantages in using technology and advantages in improving the whole, life cycle of the delivery of that asset. Now, it should be done in competition, and that competition should be assessed around both cost and capability. And I think one of the issues that we face in our business is that very often, the competition is only assessed on price, and that doesn't necessarily always give the best outcomes.
Ian, I like the discussions because it's about how can we use your expertise to improve. You mentioned the pace of making sure that these projects are built, that eventually they're not so much delayed that there's no impact on the economy because you just happen to have the activities too late in the process. But I just want to pull a bit more on your expertise about, we're looking about, let's say, a sustainable sustainable in French we say relance. Let's make sure that as we move ahead, sustainability is there in our infrastructure, in our projects. There's lots of attention now to social issues, and people will even say, when we build infrastructure, can we have in mind kind of a social aspect of the infrastructure that we built? When there was the Champlain Bridge, clearly bicycle path, clearly the view of Montreal was an element, making sure that this is not only a bridge that we cross, but a bridge that we enjoy. So how would you advise municipalities, provincial governments, in terms of that aspects of the infrastructure moving forward?
Great question. Great question. And I'm going to have to apologize for a long answer here, because it's something that is very, very at the heart of what we're trying to achieve here as SNC-Lavalin, and what we feel quite passionate about in terms of how things can be done better. And you reference sustainability. So let me just set the scene around perhaps sustainable infrastructure. There's two types of infrastructure and the way that we see it in terms of sustainability. There's the supply side infrastructure, which really supplies the energy that's necessary to drive the world, to keep the world moving. And that supply side would be, in the extractive industries such as oil and gas or mining, using those fuels to create power and energy, obviously for electricity and transportation. So we call that the supply side. And then you've got the demand side, and the demand side is where we live. The buildings that we live in, the offices that we work in, the trains that we travel in, the airports that we prepare to travel in. That all of the built environment together is supply side, demand side, and we provide services as SNC-Lavalin to all of those things, or all of those aspects of infrastructure globally is what we do. We provide professional services, design services, project management services to all of those parts of the built environment. So what's important is to reduce the energy the demand uses and reduce the emissions from the supply. Now in Canada, we're lucky because a lot of our energy is clean energy. It's produced, and electricity is produced from clean energy. So the issue here is to reduce demand, and technology is the key. And technology is also the key to the impact on communities, because we can build a bridge or a building and entirely in the virtual world. So we can make the 3D model of a building, which we often do. We can put people in that building, and we can model the operation of that building and how it's used and what energy is used and what the lifespan of the building looks like and the operation and maintenance. And we can do that with our clients to get the best, most sustainable outcome. And we can understand from that modeling, what the impact on society is, and even experience the living within that building, or the, as you say, the cycling on the cycle track of the Champlain Bridge, long before a bucket or a shovel is put in the ground. So we're advocating that this is a better way to build sustainable infrastructure. And in fact, when you think of many countries have a commitment of carbon net zero by 2050, we must engineer to ensure that we deliver against that carbon net zero. So we call this engineering net zero, and we use this with clients and governments, but it isn't used sufficiently and adequately to give the best outcomes. And it kind of brings me back to the point about partnerships between public sector and private sector before. So, sorry, long answer, but I needed to set the scene there to kind of make the point.
Ian, we, and I will include myself then as a citizen, when we have a public announcement of a project that will be done, the clock is ticking at that moment, and everybody becomes very impatient to see the cranes and the bulls and everything. And the question that comes to mind when you mention this capacity now that we can kind of build digitalized project before and then assess all the aspect of it, does that create delays before we see the cranes? In a sense, we mentioned when government announce or want a project done, the issue here is to gain time. Would you say that with good preparation we gain time, or that it takes a bit more time?
Absolutely believe that we would gain time. Because if we truly create this partnership and we understand the impact on community, for example, through the digital twin, so we call this digital twinning, by the way, then the outcomes, the objectives that collectively government or community or ourselves as the company delivering the product, the objectives can be aligned and expectations can be aligned, both to time, disruption, to the community, the outcome at the end. We can visualize all of that, and I think this is absolutely the right way forward for how buildings are delivered.
We touched a little bit upon the subject I want to approach now, which is the framework for tenders. We touched it a little bit earlier when I said how do you maintain competition in the system, but clearly we're still equipped with a system that favors the lower costs, and obviously all across the world you must deal with lots of different framework for tenders. What would you suggest that we do here? You mentioned earlier quality, you mentioned sustainability. There are lots of elements in assessing proposals that are not about the costs, but are about other aspects. How should we modify, what would be the best practice for our framework for tenders, in your views?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is, I think Canada is quite innovative around the delivery of infrastructure. And absolutely what I see in the provinces and the federal government is a commitment to do things better. I mean, and there are some very, very significant projects where the capability of companies like ours, as well as the cost, and as well as the time, and as well as the ability to perform, are being considered to form those partnerships. And there are very, very significant moves to develop frameworks where that can happen. And I'm really optimistic. I mean, very optimistic that we're going to find better solutions here in Canada of how to deliver major infrastructure, because the outcomes that are developed right now are not always successful. Sometimes they are successful. I think the Champlain Bridge is a great example of success. I actually think the REM in Montreal, I mean, the procurement of that was innovative by the case, and I think that is a good example where innovation in how things are done is also applied. So I'm quite optimistic. We're also, in the UK, I mean, we're working on numerous projects where, cost isn't the only consideration, that actually other outcomes are the consideration, such as quality, capability, time, and impact on the community. So, we're working on a major railway there, actually, under that sort of framework. So I see that there's a change here, and there needs to be, because if you consider everything else that I've said about technology, about modern construction, about the need to develop partnerships, all of these things need to work together to improve the outcomes.
Ian, I'd like to come back a bit more about SNC as this great company. And first, the environment, the world environment is evolving. We see some geopolitical tensions here and there. All over the world, I suspect, we can see movements like what we see here in Quebec, which is kind of buy local. Make sure that you work with local companies. Now, you're global. How do you see things evolving from that standpoint for SNC-Lavalin? How do you feel that you might be at risk in some countries where you would not be perceived as local and eventually not have access to the project or not be able to be considered? How do you see that situation evolving worldwide?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Thanks. And it actually goes back to one of the things I said at the beginning about performance and simplification. So we've been simplifying our geographical footprint over the last year or so, and really focusing on Canada, the UK, and the US as what we would call our core geographies, and not exiting other geographies like Asia Pacific or the Middle East or Northern Europe or South America. We haven't exited, but we've been careful to de-risk our exposure to, fluctuating workloads. I mean, for example, in the Middle East, we've seen as COVID's hit the Middle East, and also, the fluctuation in oil price, we've seen workloads kind of fluctuate there. So over this period of time and the last year or so, we've been really focusing on core geographies and core clients. So I think we have the right kind of client base and geographical footprint going forward that plays to our strengths, our particular strengths.
This approach where you want to a bit of, I'd say, de-risking, and by focusing on certain core geography area, how do you see that in terms of the projects themselves, the type of project, the nature of project, perhaps even the format of the collaboration and the risk within projects? I know that you have shifted over time. Do you think now you are where you want to be?
We're getting closer to it. I mean, everything is a journey. So we've been working hard certainly this last 2 years or so to reinvent the company, make sure that we are based on engineering excellence. I mean, the core DNA of SNC-Lavalin, if you go back many years, is really founded on engineering and engineering excellence. And we've been taking the company back to that core, to that true DNA, where we are engineers. We engineer things in the built environment. Two real strengths that we have as a company. One is in the nuclear sector, where you would think, well, there's not a lot of nuclear power stations or power plants being built. But actually, there's a lot of activity in the nuclear sector because, we've got to clean up the past. We've got to decommission power plants. And there is a drive going forward to think about nuclear as a solution for clean energy, which we definitely believe is a key significant solution for clean energy. And I think transport infrastructure, particularly railways, is a very big strength of ours. And similarly, we believe railways and the electrification of railways is also, a sustainable, clean way of transporting people in the future. So those are global strengths that we have, and those are very important capabilities that we've built and continue to build on for our future.
Ian, let's come back to Montreal. Your head office is here. You have lots of people working here. How do you see the future of SNC-Lavalin within, I'd say, his hometown? And how do you see the talents evolving and the capacity to grow from here?
Yeah,
I'm leading the Chamber of Commerce, so I have to push you there, and I'll push you as far as I can.
Yeah. My goal, my goal would be to see that everyone in Quebec and Canada is proud of this company. I mean, we are proud. SNC, we're proud of this company. I would like to see Canadians proud of this company. And I think our history is here. Our history is in Quebec. I respect that. I'm clearly not from Quebec, but I live here now, and I've been here 6 years. There's been lots of discussions and talk in the past about whether we're staying, whether we're going, and I particularly did an interview 6 months ago and said we're staying. We're here. I live here. We're here. We're intending to be a Montreal-based company from Quebec. I mean, so I hope that was put off the table because there is no intention to leave. But the key for me is, I think we've got the pride back within our employees. The key for me is to get the pride back from Canada.
How do you achieve that? My question it seems to be, how do we? Because I can see the bridge, and I'm proud of the bridge. I can see many things that you do, and I think people are proud of the project themselves or the results. Maybe they don't know it's SNC involved, but how do we do that?
So I think we have to perform as a company. We have to make sure that what we do is seen as contributing positively to society, because it does. Everything we do for the built environment actually contributes strongly to the way we live, the way we travel, the way we work. So we have to continue to promote the company, and I say all the time to our employees globally, we've got to be really proud of what we do here, because when we're proud of what we do, then ultimately everybody around us will be proud of what we do. We have to be consistent with our customers. We have to seek repeat business from our customers, which are primarily governments around the world. What's really interesting is that, I'm a global person. So I've lived in Asia Pacific. I've spent my life, working outside more the UK than actually working in the UK. An SNC-Lavalin brand globally is a very, very important brand, and a company which is seen for engineering excellence globally. And I think we've got to see it that way in Canada.
Ian, well, let's now perhaps get into a more personal discussion. I'd like to first ask you a question. I'm going to mention a few projects in the Montreal area. You got involved in the Trudeau International Airport, the Dorval Airport. SNC was involved in the REM, as we all know, and the REM is still on the way. The Science Complex of Université de Montréal, the Champlain Bridge we mentioned. From your personal view, within all the Montreal area, what is the project that makes you the proudest of?
I think, the answer is embedded in the last question, right? If we can use a project that makes both our employees and people proud of SNC-Lavalin, then that's the project that makes me proud. So I think the Champlain Bridge. I can see it. So that's the project that I think is a very, very well built, designed, engineered project. It's there for another 120 years, or more, and I think it's something that we can be very proud of.
I crossed it several times recently, and whenever I'm on that bridge, I just feel the space. It's wide, it's big, and I always think, okay, the capacity of that bridge you mentioned is there. The bridge is there for more than 100 years, but the capacity will allow fluidity, I suspect, for a long time. So I agree with you. I'm very proud of that bridge. Internationally, you involved SNC in lots of projects at this moment. We will have the possibility of traveling once again in the future. when we go across the planet, what should we look, and when we're going to see it, we're going to say, this is SNC-Lavalin, this is from my hometown. What should we as Quebecers be proud of when we travel the world and realize SNC is behind that?
Well, it's probably difficult to know what we are behind. So because it's so much. I mean, what we do, particularly in the UK, the United States, and Canada, a lot of it is not prominent. It's in services and designs, and consulting and project management, and you may not see our brand all over the construction site, because all our work is in the oversight and the planning and the design. But for sure, I'm absolutely sure if you travel on some railways, SNC-Lavalin will have had something to do with that railway, and something to make sure that railway operates effectively. Airports across the world, we have done multiple designs and engineering for airports, and I hope we're all going to be back in airports at some point, and traveling again, as you say. Many projects, power. I mean, look at the Canadian technology can do nuclear power stations across the world. We're fueling the electricity grids of the globe through clean power, through nuclear, and we hope that's something of the future also. So many numerous kind of projects and so many numerous clients. But probably if you're living in the built environment or you're traveling somewhere somehow, we'll probably have been involved.
SNC is there. Maybe a last question, and I'm going to speak to the small boy in you. You've been in projects all your life. We are in a world where we see more unsolicited proposals here and there on the planet. Now, you, Ian, what would be a great proposal you'd like to make? We're discussing these days we call that train à haute fréquence, which is a high frequency trains between Montreal, Toronto, and that corridor. We're looking at new green infrastructure, everything that will relate to electric cars. I would say, what is the unsolicited proposal that you would like to make that would get the small boy in you very excited?
I think what you said with the railway, the electrified high-speed railways, absolutely in a country like Canada, where most electricity is clean energy. So, electrified railways, moving people rather than cars and lorries and buses, it's got to be the way forward. It's got to be the best way forward for, reducing that energy demand, and the emissions. So definitely railways.
Well, maybe that's the answer to my question. What does it take to make Canadians proud of SNC-Lavalin again? Maybe achieving that would make all Canadians proud again, that, we're doing it here and SNC is behind that. So let's hope that we can get there. Thank you, Ian. I think it was a very constructive, very interesting discussions. Personally, and as a chamber CEO, we clearly see SNC-Lavalin as a pillar of Montreal's expertise, Montreal's economy, and we hope all the best for the company. So thank you again, and good luck.
And thank you so much. Thank you. I couldn't thank our employees enough. They're working hard at rebuilding this company. Thank you.
Et pour tous ceux qui nous écoutent, and Ian, maybe that would be of interest for you as well. On 13th of October, so very quickly, I'm going to have an exchange. Je vais parler avec la docteure Mylène Drouin, qui est la responsable de la santé publique pour la région de Montréal. Donc, dans quelques jours, on aura l'occasion d'échanger, évidemment, dans le contexte de la deuxième vague, dans le contexte des exigences sanitaires, mais surtout dans le contexte de comment on va voir la situation évoluer du point de vue du milieu du travail, du point de vue des entreprises. Donc, j'aurai le plaisir de m'entretenir avec Mylène Drouin. C'est mardi, le 13 octobre prochain, à 12h30. C'est un rendez-vous pour tout le monde. À bientôt et merci encore une fois.